there, and welcome back to Migraine Relief Hotline. I'm Kelly, the migraine dietitian, and today we're going to be doing something a little different. So, this is a bonus episode that I wanted to try with y'all to see if you enjoyed it. So, today I'm going to be reading some posts from Reddit. In particular, I'll be reading posts from a subreddit called Am I the A-Hole? So, we're going to read through these posts together. They are relevant to migraine, and then I'll react to them and we'll decide if they're the a-hole or not. Okay, so I'm gonna read one or two of these, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Okay, so our first post is, am I the a-hole for ignoring my student when he said he had a migraine and caused him to faint? Yikes. Okay, I feel like I already have opinion on this one, but let's read the story here. So they said, last Wednesday I was teaching my class when a student approached me and told me he had a migraine. He asked if he could go to the nurse and asked to go home because he felt really bad. Gosh, have you been there? Because I've been there. I had migraine attacks when I was in elementary school, so I definitely sympathize with this kid already. Okay, so they go on to say, I assume the kid was either just trying to get out of class, especially because this was in math, which he doesn't do particularly well in, or he just has a headache and was over-exaggerating as kids do. He's 8. I honestly didn't think he even knew what a migraine was. Fun. I hate that. Oh, I hate that. So that is so belittling to this child. He clearly does know what a migraine attack is, and it's not up to this teacher to decide whether or not they have one. Right? They're not a doctor. They're not a nurse. They can't feel this kid's pain. And you know what? Even if it is just a bad headache, so he still needs some help, send him to the nurse. My goodness. Okay, so they go on to say, and I'm sorry, this is really going to trigger you, but I'm going to read it anyway. I told him to drink some water and sit back down, and if he still felt bad after the lesson, then I would take him to the nurse during break and he could have some Calpol. I don't know what that is, but this might be from another country. Just drink some water. This is probably the first time this kid is hearing this, and it will not be the last, right? How many times has someone told you, just drink some water? Have you had some water? Like, water is not the cure for migraine, y'all. I don't know if you knew that. Not a migraine cure. Okay, so I figured this would work for both options since he still had to stay in maths. See, they said maths, so this is definitely overseas. And if he actually was sick, he wouldn't mind missing his break. We would also need to call his mom to give him Calpol, who would confirm if he actually had a migraine or was just over-exaggerating. My goodness, can we not ask the actual child whose head it is? However, about 10 minutes later, I heard a loud thud and turned around to see he had fainted. Oh my God, and was now lying on the floor unconscious. That's extreme. I wonder if something else is going on with this kid. I've never fainted from a migraine attack before, but I'm assuming it could be part of some people's attacks since there are so many different symptoms associated with migraine. Let me know if you've ever fainted from a migraine attack. That would be a little concerning to me, or a lot concerning, honestly. Okay, so they were lying on the floor unconscious. I immediately sent another student to get the nurse and began trying to wake him up. He regained consciousness after about 2 minutes. Oh my gosh. And we got him some water. There's the water again. Oh my God. Get this kid some meds. The receptionist rung his mom and she picked him up around 10 minutes later. The next 2 days he wasn't present in class and I began to grow concerned. Now you're concerned. Gosh. On Monday before school started, his mom came in and began to scream at me, threatening to call the police on me for criminal negligence and get me fired. She also said some other things which I won't repeat. She then told me her son will no longer be present in my class and she would get him moved to another class. I don't blame this mom. I don't blame her at all. I'd be pretty mad too. And honestly, I am pretty mad, and it's not even my kid. So they asked, at the time my reasoning made sense, did it? But now I'm starting to think I'm in the wrong. Am I the a-hole? Wow. Okay, let's talk about this. So I'm going to read some of the responses and tell you overall whether Reddit deemed this person the a-hole or not. But I think we're probably all on the same page with this, right? Because this poor kid felt bad enough to go mention to his teacher that he needed to go to the nurse. He needed to go home. It's, an emergency at that point. And he was ignored. And my goodness, if that doesn't bring back memories of being in school and being called, sensitive or said that I was exaggerating because not only for having to, go to the nurse for a migraine attack, but also for like having to go to the bathroom. Like, I'm sure it's different now, at least I hope it is, but I had so many teachers tell me I couldn't go to the bathroom. Craziness, craziness. So I hate this. I hate this for this kid. And I hate that it's taken such an extreme event for this teacher to think that maybe they're in the wrong. And look, I know teaching is not easy. I know kids suck. Like, I understand that too. But let's leave it up to the school nurse to decide if this kid is overreacting or making this up. It's not the teacher's problem, right? Leave it to the nurse to figure out. That's my opinion. I kind of think they're the a-hole here, but I want to hear what you have to say. Now, let's read some of the comments here, and I'll go ahead and tell you Reddit did deem them the a-hole, like unanimously. But some of the comments here, one said, "You're the math teacher. Your job is to teach math, not assess whether a student has a legitimate claim to being physically unwell. You should have directed him to the nurse so the nurse could assess and make the call on it. You were grossly negligent here, and if I were a parent at the school, I would also be concerned." Yeah, that's basically exactly what I said, right? It's not her job to medically assess her students. That's not something that she should even be worried about. That's what the nurse is there for, right? So fully agree with that. There's another comment here that is a little mini story time relevant to this. They said, "A friend of mine had the same situation happening to her when she was in high school. She had a headache and asked the teacher if she could go see the school nurse. The teacher assumed that she was faking it and refused. It turned out that she had a stroke. Oh my gosh. I don't remember what happened exactly since I wasn't there when it happened. I've only been told about it. But even thinking about it 10 years later infuriates me. I have no idea what happened to that teacher, but I sincerely hope they face the consequences of their actions." That just makes me so sad when kids are ignored and not believed. And again, I get why it happens because kids lie, kids exaggerate. Sure, totally. Kids don't want to be in school. I feel it. But at the same time, if they're saying there's something physically wrong, can we just believe them? Assume they're not lying, and then if they are, it'll get sorted out, right? Someone else also responded to that and had a very similar experience as me, where I was talking about not being allowed to go to the bathroom. And they said, "Happened to me in second grade. Teacher ignored me with my hand up to go to the bathroom, and I eventually wet myself. Obviously lower stakes than this situation, but I haven't forgotten about that embarrassment, and I'm 43. What's the deal with that? They were so strict about that when I was growing up in school, like not having more than like 2 bathroom passes a day. And your girl needs to pee a lot because I drink a lot of water because I have migraine. Hello. Not to mention like girls having their period. Like they're going to need to go to the bathroom potentially more than 2 times in a day. So that's just horrible. Horrible treatment. Okay, another comment says, "You're the a-hole. The kid knew he has migraines, told you he had one, and you ignored him. He can now have a concussion from falling on the floor. You do not get to decide what is or is not happening with someone else's body. Listen to your students and do right by them or choose a different profession." Oof. I mean, I feel like that's fair. Another comment says, "You're the a-hole." And then they quoted the original poster, the OP, where they said, "He's 8. I honestly didn't think he even knew what a migraine was." And then they said, "Guess what? A kid who suffers from migraines would know what they are. You are so incredibly wrong." Exactly. Wouldn't that like ring a warning bell in your head or like raise a red flag that, oh my gosh, most kids don't know what migraine is, but this one does, probably because he has it. Like, come on, critical thinking here. Someone responded to that and said, "My brother's migraine started at 4 years old. It took so long to identify what was happening because he would just suddenly start screaming in pain and throwing up." Oh, that's so sad. Another comment says, "Automatically, you're the a-hole. I've been in your student's place many times before, and I low-key wish I was able to faint from the excruciating pain to make myself taken more seriously." Ugh. I know a lot of us can probably relate to that because for the most part, migraine is an invisible illness, right? Unless you have something like, hemiplegic migraine where it can have physical manifestations that are obvious. Sometimes you won't be taken seriously because you can't see it, which is so unfair. So unfair. Okay, someone else said, you're the a-hole. If a kid says they have a headache or any kind of ache that they think is worth the trip to the nurse, you send them to the nurse, even if you think they're lying to get out of class. Let the nurse make the call to the parents and let the parents decide what's happening. You are a teacher, not medical personnel or the parent. You can't read minds or feelings, so you have no clue what the kid is feeling. And while we're on the subject of believing or not believing, if a kid asks to go to the bathroom, let them. See, this is what I'm saying. This is exactly what I'm saying. Kids aren't prisoners when they're in school. They still have physical needs, human needs. They still need to pee. They still have things wrong with them. My goodness. So honestly, I've been trying to find someone who's potentially saying, you're not the a-hole, and I can't, just to give us some differing opinions, but I can't. I don't think anyone said that they're not the a-hole for this. And in fact, this comment said, almost 99 and 44/100% of the time, okay, that's extreme. Almost 99% of the time, I'm going to back a teacher's call or play. Not this time. You're the a-hole. It's not your job to assess the health of a student. It's the nurse's job. You dropped the ball here and may have opened yourself to legal and punitive actions. And I hate to say it, but rightly so. Now that kid will never trust you again, and likely some of the other students that have underlying health issues won't either. That's very true. And honestly, having experiences like this when you're a kid can follow you for the rest of your life, and it can make you less likely to speak up and say when you need help, say when something's wrong for the rest of your life. So this is a big deal. This is a big deal to cause this kid to have such a traumatic experience. So I think we can assume that this OP, this original poster, is the a-hole, but I want to hear what you think. So let me know in the comments. Okay, so this next one, I'm going to read another one today for y'all, is a little bit longer, but I'm definitely curious to hear what it's about. The title is, Am I the a-hole for lying about getting migraines? So let's jump in and see what's going on here. So this poster said, I have a few friends who know almost everything about me, but in general, I'm a private person. I'm pretty outgoing and I find it easy to find things to talk about with people. I just prefer that those things weren't deeply personal. Okay. One of my friends who doesn't know my darkest secrets has a girlfriend. I don't dislike her, but she's kind of self-centered and I don't feel like sharing personal things with her. I bailed on a get-together a few weeks ago, and the reason I gave was that I had a migraine. When we next got together, she sat beside me and said, I've noticed you get migraines all the time. I get them too. She told me how bad hers are and asked about mine. I told her mine are bad too, and I'm sorry she suffers. I tried to steer the conversation away, but she asked what my auras look like and described her experience in greater detail. I said, I don't know, but she kept pushing to tell her how it was weird that I wouldn't say more, how I was being rude because she told me, or maybe because she didn't tell me. I couldn't tell her because I don't get auras, because I don't get migraines. Oh boy. Okay, let's pause. Let's pause here. I'm curious what the rest of the story is, because that's kind of a crappy thing to lie about. There are millions of excuses in the world. Why do you have to use that one? Why is it on their radar even, right? Like, do they have family members who have migraine? It's an interesting choice. It's an interesting choice. And actually, not everyone with migraine has aura, right? It's actually a small percentage of people with migraine that have auras. Most of us don't. So that's not what they're saying here, but just to kind of insert that too, right? Okay, so they went on to say, I do, however, have a traumatic brain injury, okay, TBI, from a car crash over 10 years ago. One of the things that I still suffer with are debilitating headaches. There are different types with different symptoms. These can knock me out for days, and it's something I struggle with a lot. Okay, see, now this can be something called post-concussion syndrome. And for some people, traumatic brain injuries like this can even trigger the onset of migraine. So obviously, I'm not trying to diagnose this person because I know nothing about them other than the fact that they were in a car crash 10 years ago, and I'm a dietitian. But I mean, it is possible that they have migraine and they just don't know it. But at the very least, sounds like they have, some lingering effects from this traumatic brain injury, which is totally valid. I wonder if maybe they just don't feel like getting into all of that because they're a private person. So instead they just say, I had a migraine, which honestly, I feel like in this situation, that's fine. Go ahead and use that term if it helps you stay private and not give away more information than you need. I think that's okay. But tell me what you think, okay? We'll keep reading here. I've worked very hard for a long time to pass as someone who has no traumatic brain injury. I know there are a lot of people who are outspoken and open about brain issues, and I support that fully. Anyone who feels comfortable with it should. For me, I struggle with the idea that I will be defined by it. There's much more to TBI than headaches. I've had bad experiences in the past because of this, and people in general don't know a lot about TBIs, so it's easier to say migraine because people understand that. Oh my gosh, that's exactly what I said, right? It's probably just easier for them, and that's exactly what they're saying. I bet we can also relate to their struggle, right? Of like just wanting to kind of appear normal and not always want everyone to know they have migraine. I get that, I get that and I appreciate it. Even though I'm someone who is the opposite and is very outspoken, not everyone needs to be an advocate. That's okay. They went on to say she wouldn't let it go and it was overwhelming, so I blurted out, I don't get migraines. I didn't think it through. Oh gosh. She looked shocked and then sort of lost it. She went to everyone saying that I was lying, never got migraines, and was using something she suffered from for sympathy. Yeah, see, this is exactly what my initial response was, right? Like, ooh, this is not great. But she doesn't have the context right now. Oh, ugh, this is a tricky situation, right? She yelled in my face. She couldn't believe I would lie about something so serious and take away from what people actually go through. Goodness, she started to cry, which surprised me, looking around at everyone and said, she's lying to all of you. She's a liar. Oof, that hit her hard, didn't it? Everyone was staring at me, and I realized explaining it meant I'd have to tell everyone everything about it. The crash, the hospital, the rehab, all of it. Saying one thing would lead to more questions, and I realized I didn't want to answer them. So I just sat there. I didn't know what to do. Her boyfriend asked, have you been lying about migraines? And I said, I get bad headaches. She said, that's not the same thing. You have no idea what I go through. No idea. This is honestly making me want to cry because what a horrible situation. And I'm sure I'm not sure, but I feel like if this friend knew, if the girlfriend knew, what they actually went through, they wouldn't be having this response. And as someone who has migraine, they would probably understand. But again, they don't have that context. And to them, it seems like someone is using their chronic condition as a convenient excuse. And of course, they're going to be upset about that. And if you're someone who's been marginalized for your condition or really struggled to be taken seriously, I could see how this would be really emotionally loaded. Oh, this is a really tough situation here. Everyone looked so disappointed in me, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. The host said, I think you should leave. She seems pretty upset. So I did. I've been getting messages from everyone who was there and people who weren't there. And her boyfriend messaged me saying I should apologize to her because her migraines are really bad. I've been ignoring them because I don't have answers for them. I'm wondering if I'm the a-hole because I technically could have explained myself and I did lie. I also feel like it's my personal history and it's a huge thing to me and I shouldn't be forced into revealing it. Lastly, I also feel it's wrong to pressure anyone into speaking about any medical issue, migraine or not, but that could just be me with the private person thing again. We're all in our late 20s and early 30s, and this has me reeling. I feel like I'm in high school again, and I have no idea if I'm the a-hole here. So, am I the a-hole for lying about getting migraines? Oof, okay. We'll read the comments here in a second, and I'm, as always, curious what you have to say and what you're thinking here. I feel like they'll probably approach this type of situation differently in the future because no, you don't have to tell anyone anything about your health, right? And at the same time, if you need to get out of something because of your health, it's best not to lie about it, right? Like you can still be vague. So if you're someone who does have migraine attacks, or actually, let's use this person's example. They have a traumatic brain injury, they have lingering effects from it. They have a horrible, headache and they can't go to some event. It's okay to say, hey, I'm not feeling good at all today. I'm going to pass. And if they pry, you can just shut it down and say, I don't really want to talk about it. I'm just not feeling great. That's fine. You can even say, I'm feeling sick today. I mean, those are pretty innocuous excuses to use. But when you have one medical condition and then you sub another one in, to explain what's going on, you risk this exact thing happening, right? You risk running into someone who actually does have that condition. They're going to want to connect with you over it and, potentially bond over it, share experiences. Meanwhile, you don't even have that thing. So I don't think this person's the a-hole. I think they're just really a private person. This isn't something they really like to share with people, especially people they don't know very well. And they just unfortunately chose the wrong excuse this time, or gave it to the wrong person who actually had context for migraine. Now, they're in a tricky spot. I think they either have to decide if they want to be more transparent with people or if they want to blow up their entire friend group, because it sounds like this has spread. It sounds like everyone knows what happened. And it does sound kind of crappy. So I think there is some explanation warranted. I don't think you have to go into your whole health history, but you could say, I just use the term migraine to explain the complex array of issues that I deal with due to a previous injury. It's not technically migraine, but I have a lot of those symptoms and people tend to know what migraine is. So I use that as an easy way to describe what I'm going through. If they said that to me, I'd be fine, but I get it. I get being very private and I get not wanting to go through this. So let's see what the comments have to say here. All right, this person said, not the a-hole. As a migraine sufferer, I don't get the auras like some people do. Yeah, see, not everyone has those. Mine suck and I take meds, but when I get one, I'm down. I get why you don't want to release the info. Just tell them you misspoke. Also, if the people texting you aren't your real friends, just ignore. You don't have to be friends with everyone. Yeah, very true. Someone responded to that and said, yeah, I agree. Also, I get cluster headaches, but it's so much easier to tell people I get migraines. No one knows what a cluster headache is. Not all lies are created equal. The pain was experienced, just the name was different. That didn't really make sense, but I get what they're saying. They were in pain and they just used a different word to describe it. I definitely get that. And I get that with cluster headaches because they are awful. They are horribly painful. But when it comes attached to the word headache, people might not take it as seriously. So that's another situation where someone might use a shortcut to explain what they're going through. I think if you do that though, you just have to be prepared to give more context if you get called out for it. So you should think about that ahead of time, right? They probably will next time. Someone else said, not the a-hole. Your medical history is up to you if you want to share it. Plenty of people don't like sharing these types of things, and it was wrong of her to keep prying. Yeah, that's totally fair too. It sounds like she was really drilling them, wanting to bond over migraine, which I get. But you also have to be able to pick up on when someone just does not want to talk about something. So yeah, that's completely a valid point, but we can't control other people's reactions and responses. All we can control is what we do. So there are ways they can prevent that from happening in the future. And even just saying, hey, I really don't want to talk about it. I'm sorry. That could have even shut it down and prevented it from going as far as it did. So there could have been ways to stop this from spiraling as much as it did. Here's another comment that said, not the a-hole, but you were very foolish to lie and then think it wouldn't come out at some time. And they have a good reason to now distrust you. Your medical history is your own, but you don't have to tell that first lie. You choose to. I think the lesson here is if you can't or don't want to go somewhere, don't give excuses. Just say private/family reasons and don't elaborate. Yeah, I had a personal thing come up. Sorry. And if they pry, you can just shut it down. I just don't want to talk about it, right? Be firm and draw those boundaries. All right, this last one says, not the a-hole. She shouldn't have been harassing you for the details. I get migraines and I don't get auras. If you want to salvage the friendship, you could tell them, I don't get migraines, but I do get headaches that are similarly severe and can last for days, which I have seen a doctor for. I just say migraines because it's similar and people understand what a migraine is. I don't think that's the best route to take. I think it would require some further explanation because I could see her just being more upset by that, right? If you say, well, I have really bad headaches. No, she's going to say the same thing she said before, which is that's not the same thing. That's not a migraine. So that might not be the best route. But they said, alternatively, you could say you misspoke and you don't get auras, but you don't appreciate being interrogated about your private medical history when you clearly don't want to talk about it. See, I think this response is just offering up solutions that are just more lies. And I don't think at this point that's necessarily the best route to take, but I get it. So let me know your thoughts on this in the comments. I'm really curious to hear what you have to say. And let me know if you like this style of episode, because I'll keep doing more reaction content if you like it. So make sure you let me know in the comments as well about that, okay? That is it for today's bonus episode of Migraine Relief Hotline. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to share it with a friend, follow, review, all that good stuff. And I will see you next week. Bye, y'all.